You are listening to the Knotted Physio podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Resmondo, owner of South Alabama Physiotherapy and creator of the Knotted Physio, where life should be fun and light. This is the podcast where we talk about how to keep the active adult who's busy with work and family life fit and healthy to enjoy the Gulf Coast outdoors. Let's get into today's episode. Before we start today, I wanted to let you know about our free Facebook group, The Knotted Physio. I do live trainings in the group each week to dive deeper into strategies to remain active and where you can ask me questions personally and I'll give you feedback. Okay, on to the episode. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode on the Knotted Physio podcast. I am your host, Jenny Resmondo. Thank you so much for tuning in. The thing that I wanted to mention to you all today was a continuation from last week's podcast. So we talked about the sciatic nerve and all the different things that could go wrong and what actually is the sciatic nerve. Well, I wanted to give you some tips to be able to avoid aggravating the sciatic nerve. There's a number of different things that you could be doing that could make it go a little haywire. So some of the symptoms, just to kind of give you an idea of what to look for and how you know that it's the sciatic nerve. Some of the symptoms that you may be experiencing is a pain in your butt. So not just the kids that are driving you insane or your spouse or your parents or whatever. It's literally a pain in your butt. So generally speaking, most people tell us healthcare providers that there is a dull throbbing ache that is deep in their butt. It kind of sometimes feels toothache, and then sometimes it could be sharp and piercing. So there is a variety of different ways that the sciatic nerve will present itself. And then the other thing to consider is that when it's really aggravated, the pain doesn't just stay in your butt. It could actually shoot down the back of your leg. So several times I've had people say that they have a shooting pain, like electricity going down the back of their leg, or they may feel burning, or they may feel tingling, those type of sensations. And sometimes it will go clear down to your big toe. And it just depends on the level of compression that you're having whenever you have this nerve pain or whenever the sciatic nerve is actually being affected. So that's a couple of different things to think about. So how do you know it's the sciatic nerve and not something else? Well, sometimes people get confused that, nerve pain or back pain itself could be causing similar symptoms. There's an area in our pelvis where our hip bone connects to our sacrum or our spine, and it's called the sacroiliac joint. You hear that as SI. Sometimes that's a problem too, and it could cause pain that seems to go in the same area as the sciatic nerve. So it all is very closely related, but your healthcare professional will be able to help you decide whether or not it's sciatic nerve pain. And then the other thing to consider is sometimes we have discs that herniate, and those are in our back, and they will cause pain that goes down our legs. Not all the time is it the sciatic nerve distribution or the pathway or the highway system that the sciatic nerve takes. Sometimes it's different highway systems that the nerve will be affected whenever you have a herniated disc. So it just really, truly depends on the area of difficulty, the area that's involved, and the pain amount that you have. Now, as a general rule of thumb, the thing that you want to avoid is bending over too much. That's almost with everything, not all. So this does not qualify as medical advice that says, oh, she said, don't bend over, never bend over. That's not the case. We do have to use our brains. We have common sense, and I want everybody to use that. But generally speaking, if you're bent over all the time, bending over to work on something, or if you are gardening for an extended period of time, sometimes that will aggravate your sciatic nerve, and you may experience pain in your butt. Sometimes if you have a herniated disc, bending over can aggravate that pain. But again, that's not all the time. That's just some of the time. So please, whenever you're having back pain, go seek out medical attention from your healthcare provider, whether it's your physical therapist, your chiropractor, your medical doctor, nurse practitioner, any of the above. Go ask for an evaluation to determine really if there's something major going on that needs to be addressed, or if it's something that you could do to work through yourself. There are many exercises that are out there that you could YouTube or Google or whatever to find out how to fix it. And all of those are great, except for may not be addressing your specific problem. So make sure that you're getting sound advice from somebody that has done a thorough evaluation to be able to help figure out exactly what problems you need to have addressed. So those are just some symptoms, some movements to avoid. Another common issue with people who have sciatic nerve pain, or what they call sciatica, is people who drive a lot or who sit a lot. So all you truck drivers out there who may be listening, you may notice that you've had some issues before, and that tends to be the case because you're seated for long periods of time while you're driving. And the same thing for people who are traveling for work, and then people who sit at a desk and do computer work. You're sitting. So, the biggest thing I could say for you guys is that you want to make sure that you're changing your position frequently, that you probably shift from side to side, you shift forward, shift back, you rock side to side, rock forward, rock backwards. And then it's so important to be able to get up and move around. For out on the boat, now, many of you who are listening will sit in your boats and drive, and that's great. And then when you get to your fishing spot, you're going to sit to fish. Now, there are many of you that don't sit to fish, that you stand to fish. But regardless, the whole point that I want you guys to be thinking about is that if you're out on the boat and you've been sitting for 20 or 30 minutes, take the next 20 or 30 minutes to stand. Now, I realize that some boats are really small and there's not much space to move around, but you could still stand. If you have a partner in the boat or a couple of different people in the boat and it's a smaller boat, you do have to make a little coordinated effort so that your balance is not thrown off. However, if you're in a bigger boat, there's no reason for you not to be standing up and moving and doing some different walking around or back bending or forward bending or side bending, just stretching, twisting. All these different things could be extremely helpful for you when you're out on the boat to prevent yourself from having sciatica. Now, the other thing that kind of goes in with the people who are riding in their boats, the truck drivers and like the big heavy machinery operators, is there's a lot of bouncing type motion. So if you're riding and it's choppy water, or if you're out in the open waters and it's high seas and you're going as fast, relatively fast, 40 miles an hour or more, you're going to have the bounce that every time you hit the waves or the little wakes, depending on what body of water you're actually in. But those bounces, and when you're riding in a truck or heavy equipment, there's a lot of bouncing that goes on there that can also aggravate your back. Generally speaking, those bouncing type motions are the ones that will aggravate a herniated disc a little bit more than it will the sciatic nerve. However, the bouncing causes the disc to squish, and the squishing motion compresses the nerve. And if it's a continuous squishing or compression on the nerve, guess what happens? You have pain, or the nerve tissue gets inflamed. It's kind of like when you bite the inside of your mouth or you bite your tongue. What happens? You just better, not to do it, but it happens again and again. So it seems like it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the pain that you have because you bit the inside of your lip or you bit your tongue gets worse and worse until you have a sore, right? That's the same thing that happens whenever you are doing this bouncing motion when you're riding in a boat, or if you're driving long distances in big trucks and heavy equipment. So think about those things. You want to change your positions and give yourself a break. having a strong core is the last thing I wanted to talk to you about. Whenever you're having that strong core, and the core is not only your abdominal muscles, but that's generally what most people think of it as. There's other things that are involved in the core, but for our purpose today, strengthening your core is going to help you whenever you have these compression moments, because you could clench and tighten your core, what's also called as bracing, to help reduce that impact on the nerves. I hope you have found this episode helpful. If I've answered your questions about things to do or things to avoid to minimize your risk of having sciatica, let me know. If there's something that I left out that is you're just dying to know, or if there's something that I didn't quite explain well enough and you need more information on it, reach out. It's not that complicated. I love answering your questions. It's so much fun to hear feedback from you all. I appreciate it. You can always reach me at jenny@salpt.com. If you'd like more information about my programs that I have to offer, if you'd like to make a phone call to have a consultation, you could do that going to the website succeedwithpt.com. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Not a Physio podcast.